Oh, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our July Police Board meeting for the Surrey Police Service. I hope everyone's got a bit of time to get away over the summer. I know it's been incredibly busy for everyone at SPS, and so I thank you for all that. I want to call to order our meeting, Melissa, and start off by acknowledging that the Surrey Police Board recognizes that our work takes place on the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples. And with that, I can move to adoptions. And I've had a chance to review the agenda, and the agenda is adopted. And likewise, I've had a chance to review the minutes from our June 26th meeting, and those are also adopted as well. Looking ahead, I see we have no presentations for this meeting, and we also had no delegation requests. So we'll move right away to D, which is our reports. And we'll start off with the community consultation plan, and that's for information. And Chief Lipinski and Superintendent Allison Good, I will pass it over to the two of you to provide those updates. So I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. The community consultation plan, this is actually our second community consultation. We'd like to walk through for you what we're about to do. The first one we did 3 years ago. It was an opportunity for us to gain information from the community with respect to what they would like to see in their new police service. And now, as we're approaching the POJ date, November 29th, we are going to do that again and get updated information. So with that, I'll pass it along to Superintendent Allison Good, who has a number of slides that gets into a little bit more detail. Allison, over to you.
Thanks, Chief, and good afternoon, Administrator Sear. As the Chief already mentioned, in 2021, and sorry, Farzan, next. In 2021, SPS developed a 3-part community consultation project, which included surveys, interviews, and focus groups. This, as the Chief mentioned, has provided the foundation for the development of the community policing model and to inform our first strategic plan. It also consisted with the interviews and the focus groups and came from a broad cross-section of stakeholders within the City of Surrey. It is noted that this community consultation process is actually something that, although this is going to be our second formal community consultation, we've been doing community consultation right from the get-go. So I just wanted to make sure that I stress that point, that many of our community partners, they either originated from the community consultations or they were ones that we had invited into that in order to gather further relationships and to garner further information on their thoughts and ideas on what policing should look like in the City of Surrey. Next. So in this 2024, our second community consultation, it's also going to follow that 3-part format, which is going to be the surveys, the interviews, and the focus groups. Approximately 100 interviews and focus groups will be conducted, and those will occur with a broad cross-section of the community, including representatives from non-governmental organizations, organizations that work with children and youth, women, seniors, at-risk, vulnerable populations, settlement groups, communities of diversity, and Indigenous persons. The interviews and focus groups will also include persons and organizations that focus on housing, homelessness, food security, mental health, addiction, school officials and educators, religious leaders, and organizations involved in crime prevention. And that's still not an exhaustive list. There is representation from across the board, many business associations and improvement associations as well. The whole process is going to take place over approximately a 6 to 8 week period. We began at the end of June with formulating our questions and identifying our interview list. We have already started and are well underway in our one-on-one interviews, which are occurring both virtually and in person. The interviews are structured in 3 parts. They begin with finding out from the interviewees some background, what their experience is, what their role is in their particular organization. We then move on to the second part, which is really focused on community safety and well-being and questions surrounding that area. And then the last portion of the interview focuses on the Surrey Police Service and their knowledge of the Surrey Police Service, what they would like to see within the organization, and gives them an opportunity to provide any feedback that they might have. Next. So the interviews and focus groups will last about 60 to 90 minutes, and they're being conducted by the Chief Constable and his team, along with a community consultation team comprised of members from our Community Policing Bureau, along with myself, and representatives from a consultation the group that we've contracted with research experts. All of the responses from the interviews and the focus groups will be collated, and a final report will be put together and provided to the chief and to the police board for their review. The timeline for this, as I've already mentioned, it began at the end of June with sort of the groundwork for it. Then at this point, we're in the interviews and focus groups timeline. And then come mid-September to mid-October is when we'd be looking at doing the reviews and the collation of the materials and the development of the report. Obviously, and then in November, it would be at that point that we'd be looking to give the presentation to the Surrey Police Board. Next. And then just sort of to wrap it up, I think it's just again important to say that this will be in collaboration with the Surrey Police Board and the leadership team. All of the results that we receive will be part of informing our 2025 to 2027 strategic plan. And most importantly, it just continues to build on the relationships and the authenticity and the trust that we're building within the community, and the outreach that's being done by our teams every day, all the way from frontline to our investigative side to our Community Policing Bureau. And I open it to any questions.
Thanks, Alison. No, that was excellent. And Chief, before I have a couple questions, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. What's really important also to keep in mind is that our results will be forwarded to the City of Surrey. We'll be working with their staff. I will be working with the city manager on those results, and the board will be informed as per the information obtained from the city and their priorities, their goals, objectives for 2025 that will assist in ultimately developing a plan for 2025 for the Surrey Police Service.
Thanks, Chief. I appreciate that. And you actually beat me to my question. So that's obviously a really important part, is the mayor and council and what their priorities are for public safety in Surrey, and how our strategic plan and your strategic plan is going to align with their priorities. So thank you for that. And I'm glad that we're working together collaboratively and getting to the table to work on those priorities. And Alison, thank you for all your work. I know this is an enormous project, but critically important. And you also answered one of my questions, but just specifically of just how important, how actionable this isn't just getting information, it's actually identifying what the priorities are, what matters most to the people in the city of Surrey, and then ensuring that the systems that are put in place, the resourcing in place are going to meet those needs. And that's going to be part of that strategic plan. And can you just just speak to, I mean, one of the things I know that can be challenging is measurables. So certainly, when people in the community and businesses identify priorities, how we can measure the success of SPS moving forward with managing or actioning some of those priorities.
No, for sure. And that's an excellent question. And, one of the questions that we actually put back to the public is that exact question. How would they like to see us measure that? And so far we're getting a number of different responses. A lot of what we've, just anecdotally, what we've received so far, and I realize this is a little bit of an aside to your specific question, but a lot of what we've received so far is they want to see our feet to the street has been the constant mantra that we've been receiving. So I think it's going to be the measurables are going to be in from the perception of the public on how we're actually out there. And then on top of that, it'll be the measurables that we actually document through our reporting structures that then go back up to the chief and will come to your doorstep. You're on mute.
Thanks, Allison. I knew I'd do it once. No, excellent, and I know that's critically important. And then being able to report back, obviously, to the community throughout 2025 is an example of where SPS is at in meeting those actionables. So, Chief, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Just to build on what Allison said there, yes, police presence is something that's starting to pop up over and over again. A little bit difficult to measure other than doing a survey again next year. But also, of course, some aspects of criminal activity, specifically the gang type of activity, which is a little bit more easier to measure. But I think that working with the city, working with the police board, putting together this plan that will have the metrics as best we can to indicate how do we know we're winning, and reporting back to the community through a forum such as this.
Well, excellent. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Allison. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? And seeing none, thank you for that report. So that report is accepted, and we will move on to item number 2. So, Chief, over to you and Inspector Ryan Hall regarding 2 officer vehicles.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The issue of 2 persons in a police vehicle has come up on occasion over the last number of years. And so we've assigned Ryan to do some research in this realm in order to see what kind of reports are out there and bring them to the board to get a context in relation to this concept of 2 persons per car. So with that, I'll hand it over to Ryan, and he'll get into a little bit more details. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Chair, how are you?
Thanks, Ryan. Sorry, I was on mute.
No, it's all good.
Look forward to hearing about your report. Nice to see you again.
Same. Next slide, please. About a year ago, the Office of the Chief Constable asked me to do a little bit of extra research into 2-person vehicle deployments, following kind of a standard research method. I wanted to figure out what previous research had been done, do a little bit of a review, just try and figure out what previous studies would help inform us moving forward. From that, I did a historical review of the 2-person deployments, not only in Canada, but in North America and a little bit international as well. We wanted to figure out how do those reports fit into the city of Surrey, if at all, because the city of Surrey is a unique city. Certainly what works in one city in the US or one city in Canada or one city in the UK might not work with the city of Surrey. And so for that, I wanted to do a bit of a data dive. So we examined the 2023 calls for service and put the literature review and that information together. From there, then the premise was, what model do we run if we need one, and how efficient can we get it? We took a look at what criteria we need to use to make that decision, and obviously efficiency, as I just mentioned, is one of the criteria. We wanted to see how a 2-person car could manage risk for officers on the road and for the community that we serve. And we wanted to see how it could enhance culture. From one of the reports that we read earlier. Several organizations use two-person cars to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. Next slide. When we began the literature review and the research review, what we noted is that the debates on one versus two-person vehicle deployments actually go back to the beginning of radio deployments in vehicles. So it went right back to the post-World War II model of police deployments. When car radios began, and this goes back in history a little bit, when car radios first started, the premise was that one officer could cover a large geographic area and they could communicate with other officers who could quickly provide cover. Therefore, you didn't need two officers in one car. When you look at large cities that have used two-person car deployments, New York PD, they have moved back and forth on the model. They have not found a common or consistent model to use. Certainly in the 90s, they went to a one-person car. They found that the results were inconclusive. Two-person cars would help with community engagement in some areas, and one-person cars might help with some of their lower-risk calls. Cash-strapped cities outside New York, they obviously went with the one-person model because what they found is that if they were heading to lower priority calls, late report break-ins, etc., what they found was that it was redundant to pay two officers to attend that same call. LAPD, another large city in North America, they are unapologetic for running their famous Atom cars, which is their typical frontline patrol deployment. They run two-person deployments since the 50s, and they found it to be incredibly efficient, and all their training and all their tactics lend towards a two-person car. Next slide, please. Some of the studies go back to 1979. They say that, yes, a single car deployment can be quicker for response times, provides higher visibility because you have more cars in different areas, and it did not affect public safety. Some international reviews more recently in the 2000s showed that in the UK, yes, you can respond just as efficiently with two-person cars. But what we found is that in the UK, the population density is quite high, and so it works quite well for them there. But the secondary results and the things I didn't intend or didn't know that I was going to find until obviously we began the review was that the results of two-person cars are good for mental health, they're good for socialization, and they're good for culture of an organization. Yet, at the end of the research, the conclusion suggested that the studies regarding the one or two officer deployment, I found them to be outdated. There's not a lot published, and they're largely inconclusive as to whether any organization should or should not run a one or two-person car. Next slide, please. From that, I wanted to take a look at the 2023 data. What did it mean for calls for service in Surrey? What does it mean for the officers who attend the calls? What does it mean for the public who call the police for assistance in emergency and non-emergency situations? So from an efficiency perspective, I did a review and I found that approximately 41% of the time, two or more officers in two vehicles are dispatched to the same call for service. Comparing all the calls for service across quarters and across the districts of the city, I found that the calls for service were about 87% similar. About 1% for each district is a P1 response, and about 47% for each district is a P2 response. But what we could determine quite confidently is that 1 in every 3 to 1 in every 2 calls for service require a 2-officer response to the city of Surrey last year in 2023. Next slide, please. So after we finished with efficiency, we moved on to risk. And what I wanted to take a look at is what are the risk factors when officers respond to calls. In policing, the calls are prioritized as a priority 1 or a priority 2, 3, or 4 call. Priority 1 is your largest, your most risk call. It's where somebody's being hurt or there's damage to something in progress or a break and enter in progress. Priority 2 follows behind on that for in-progress crimes like mischief, in progress or damage to property. And then your P3 and your P4 calls are lower priority. They could be something like an unwanted person sitting in the vestibule of a bank as it opens, or it could be priority 4 call, could be like a late report, theft from a vehicle. What we found though is that P1 and P2 calls make up approximately 72% of calls that our frontline service officers that attend. And it appears from the research that the majority of time in Surrey, P4 calls are actually written off on a desk. And that's good to note because in other organizations like Delta, where I came from, we attend all the P4 calls, the no call too small philosophy. So the risk factor for officers attending frontline calls for service in Surrey is actually higher because they attend a P1 or a P2 call for service about 72% of the time, about 3 and 4 calls. With culture, obviously, we are forming an organization. Our goals are inclusion and diversity within development, within our strategic plan, within our core values. The two-officer model makes sense, obviously, if we want to attain higher levels of officer health and well-being. And certainly, there is one organization out there that has done it efficiently for the history of policing in the last 70 years, that being LAPD. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, we believe the need for two officer deployments is obviously situational. It appears to rest on 3 principles. Efficiency, as we talked about, how many times does a police organization send 2 cars to the same call? Risk, what are the calls for service that you're attending and how often are you attending them? And then culture, as we discussed previously. Next slide, please. So the recommendation is that Surrey Police Service deploy 2-person cars. This should be based on a call type and response requirements. It should be in a ratio amount. I think basically what you could take a look at is by the number of cars deployed, the number of officers deployed within existing resources. So there's no additional cost. We don't have to hire any more frontline officers. We can do it with existing resources. It certainly doesn't mean that every car has to be a 2-person car. We can run a ratio of 2-person cars and we can assign them to or dispatch them to the higher risk calls. We can do this across all parts of the city. We can use it to match the situation and be flexible with our deployments. And this is from the 2023 data and from previous research on policing models. Now with that, Mr. Chair, I'll open the floor to questions.
Thanks, Ryan. Really appreciate the presentation. I know you've done a lot of work and research on that. And Chief, I'll pass it over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you again, Ryan. Well done. So here we have some evidence-based research pointing us in a certain direction. Having said that, as we work towards November 29th, there's still a lot of work to be done, as indicated by Ryan, that it's a ratio. 41% of the calls require 2 people, and it also depends on the shifts, as we know, Friday night, Saturday night, etc. So we will make those determinations. The philosophy is we will have a ratio to the front line based on metrics, and we will be moving forward with that, but there's still that piece of work that needs to be done. Those are my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Chief. No, I think it's an important point you make is that it's evidence-based, and it doesn't mean it's carte blanche 60% across
Correct.
the city are 2-person cars, but in fact, based on the call load and that. So a very important point. Todd?
Thanks for the presentation, Ryan. Just a follow-up question as to what is the future as far as gathering data on this? So if Surrey Police goes down the road and institutes or introduces some type of ratio of 2-person cars, what is the plan, or is there a plan to capture data once that's in place? So do we want to look at things like what is our call efficiency like? What is our time on call? Is it reduced or is it the same with 2-person cars? Or even things such as looking at use of force incidents with 2-person cars versus 1-person cars. Just wondering if you thought about some of those things.
No, absolutely. There's limitations on the research. Certainly, when you just look at data, you don't get that informed feel. You still have to use an officer's intuition. I know that I've been in situations where I wish there was a 2-person car. Early in my career, I was at a regular call for service, routine call, and wound up in a 7-minute altercation to arrest a suspect. I think the goal would be to take a look at that data, make an informed decision as to how many we deploy, and then we can increase or decrease that number based on what we're finding from the officer's feedback, what we're finding from the public feedback, and certainly what we're finding from the efficiency in calls for services. We take over OCC and are able to manage that. Does that answer your question, sir?
It does. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. No, and you bring up an important point, and Ryan, maybe you can touch on it. So again, having the pre and post data going into this, and I know some of the data is limited at this point, but another one I think would be important for the board is response times. Certainly looking at what is the response time for a priority 1, priority 2 call now, based on when it's, we have 2-person cars throughout the city, and just ensuring that there's not it doesn't take longer for people to attend those immediate emergent calls.
No, absolutely. I think one of the things we can use is view the CAD data in response for P1 and P2 calls. I think the chief had a goal of under 7 minutes. I don't want to put words in his mouth in case I'm off there a little bit, but I do remember that from a meeting. And I believe that we have to analyze what the Surrey RCMP have been able to do to date and use that as a measuring stick. Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And yeah, Chief, I know that's a very important one, is just ensuring that we can get to the calls quickly, which is also to a point, Ryan, you made about P4 calls. And I know, the no call too small philosophy in communities where they don't have a lot of calls is something that's unique, but certainly in a community that's very busy, I think it's critical that the efficiencies that SPS is bringing forward to ensure that people can speak to somebody on the phone and report the minor crimes while knowing that in an emergency someone will be there very quickly for them because they're available. The only other question I was just going to bring in, I'll pass over to you, Mike, is that I got to hit the elephant in the room. Of course, you've heard a lot about cost budgets, and that is something that's come up a lot with community misunderstanding of this. And I also think obviously the city having some concerns. Whether Chief or Ryan, if you could just really hit that, speak to the cost, because one of your slides did say, which kind of jumped to me, was cash-strapped communities, have not used 2-person cars because of some of the redundancies in that. But I just want to really get a understanding of just cost implications of a 2-person car. So, Chief, I'll let you start there, and then Mike, we'll get over to you.
Yeah, I'll start off with this. So it is our intention that we are not increasing the front line in order to use 2-person vehicles. And we believe that there's an efficiency gain there, as Ryan had indicated. So we have, vis-a-vis some other very small police agency, we have a lot of priority 1 calls. We have a lot of emergency calls that require 2 persons. And it just stands to reason that you would send a 2-person car to that instead of 1 person arriving, waiting for the second one, etc. There's an argument to be made, although it's not a strong one, that we save on miles on the car, kilometers on the car. But for our purposes going forward, it's not a requirement for us to have more officers on the front line to meet the 2-person car commitment.
Oh, thanks, Chief. I just want to really clarify that. And there's no request for additional police officers based on the change of a model. It's just changing a policy and changing a deployment strategy that, as you said, is more efficient. So, Mike, over to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, the chief covered part of it, what my comment was going to be. I think, when we look at response times, but I think we also have to remember that on a priority 1 and 2, you could get a response time quickly, but you'll have that member staged waiting for the second member to arrive. So it's not only where the first member is for the priority, it's the backup member as well. I think a lot of that has to be taken into account.
No, thank you for that. It's a good point. And no, I've been around this model for a bit. I know its efficiencies and value, and the fact that you're doing a lot of research and study to prior to deploying it, looking at the metrics and studying that, I think is critical. And so I thank you for that. Is there any other comments or questions before we move on? Ryan, thanks again for your presentation. It was excellent, provide a lot of clarity, and very much appreciated. So that has been received, and we'll move on to number 3, the financial update. And Chief and Nathan, I'll pass it over to you.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. My summary statement is we're tracking very well towards the end of the year to have a surplus, and I'll ask Nathan to delve into the details of that. Nathan?
Thank you, Chief. I'm just gonna share a slide and then please let me know if it's on the screen.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, thank you. So the report in the package talks about our Q2 financials. So it was as of the end of June. I'll just go through a few slides here. One sec. Okay. So our 2024 provisional budget of 142 million is used as the reference to compare budget versus actual. City Council approved 222 million this year for police service. So that amounts to be split between the RCMP contract and SPS operations. We don't have an exact allocation, but our provisional budget is within that 222 million amount. And so in addition to the budget allocated by City Council, the province of BC has also provided grants to support us directly earlier this year. So total grant amount received to date is $4.2 million. We track the use of the grant on our own financial accounting systems as separate from the city. So Appendix 1 in the report actually shows our financial statements for the amount that is tracked in our accounting system. The financial summaries throughout the report is the consolidated amount between both systems, the cities and SPS accounting systems. At the end of June, our year-to-date expenditures were at $44 million. That's about 31% utilization of our provisional budget at the half-year mark. Our monthly expenses are about $7.3 million per month. Our largest area of cost to date has been in salary and benefits at $38 million, which is about 93% of our regular operating costs. For the first half of the year, we've been a bit lean on our capital and other expenditures as we haven't placed a lot of the orders for our capital items. But now that we have our POJ date, we have started ordering those equipment and inventory items we need for November 29th. We should see those bills come in gradually throughout the coming months. So we do expect our expenditure trend to go up a bit, but everything is still anticipated to be within the provisional budget. We do not foresee any overspending at all so far. And then going on to the Police Transition Project Fund, we're about $2.1 million out of what we forecasted. So we forecasted 15.4 million this year. So we're about 14% right now. So this fund captures a lot of the one-time build, predominantly is on an infrastructure build and IT. So similar to our regular operating expense, we do expect the trend to increase throughout the coming months as we go to POJ, as work is picking up now. So the invoices should start rolling in. And that's the end of the report. I'll take any questions you may have.
No, thanks, Nathan. I know you and I have, and the chief, we've had different meetings and talked a lot about this. So I do know that we anticipate coming in quite a bit under budget this year, but I do know that, you know, right now we're at 6 months, 31% of the overall spend, but that's going to go up quite significantly, but still under budget, just as the hiring, chief, I know is going to continue to ramp up and increase, which is a very good thing. And to have all the capital, equipment required for that influx of people. So that's all a positive. And so I have no questions. I don't know if you had another comment, Chief.
Nothing here. We're tracking well. So thank you, Nathan, for all that good work. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. And thanks for all your work. I know you're working as well with the city on this moving forward. We'll receive that report and we'll move forward to the police transition update. It's a verbal update. Chief, over to you.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a quick summary. We now have 3 levels of government, the RCMP and the SPS working together. It's great to have the city of Surrey at the table. It's been very helpful. We are making progress. Much of what we're working on is still very much in draft form, so I can't speak to it as of yet. But I think in the coming weeks, some of it will come to crystallization, and we will be having a communications plan with the public sometime probably in September as we put together the entire plan. On a different note, you mentioned it, Mr. Chair, is the hiring. We have a lot of applications coming in now since the date has been finalized and the financial issues between the province and the city has been finalized. Both on the recruits, which is the people going to the JI. Certainly very robust application list there. And then on the experienced officers, it seems to be building on a weekly basis of the number of applications. And there certainly is a lot of interest from across Canada. And so we are positioned very, very well. Also, I'll mention, as you know, there's 10 marked cars out there. There'll be another 10 going out on August 6th. And then in September will be the final 10 marked SPS cars for this year. So right now we're situated well, and we are moving forward.
No, thanks, Chief. And I want to thank all your team. I know everyone has gone absolutely over and above to develop plans, transition plans, working with all the stakeholders. And I've had an opportunity to see a lot of that work, and it is truly impressive. And I know there's a lot more to be done, but I want to thank you for that. And I'm glad to see the cars out. I think that's critically important to start to get the community to see that SPS is out there in their own vehicles, and the 10 more is good. I didn't know that. So 10 more in August is great news. So no, thank you for your report, and I look forward, and I know the community looks forward to hearing a lot more about what is ahead. So that report is received, and I'll move forward. We have no new information. We have no correspondence or new business. Our next board meeting will be September 18th, 2024. So I know a lot will occur between now and then, which will be that'll probably be a very informative meeting. And I also just want to say real quickly, I hope that continue to see the recruiting increase. I know now Surrey is such an exciting place for police officers to come and work. It's a dynamic city, and it's an exciting city. So I'm really optimistic you're going to see a lot more experienced police officers coming forward. So with that, we'll hold a motion to hold a meeting in closed, and I will pass that motion. I guess, Mel, I've sort of taken this meeting from you, but it was just kind of rolling. I apologize for that. Is there anything, Mel, that we just kind of rolled with it today? So
you did my job really well. Thank you.
Well, it kind of goes back and forth, but I thought I'd give you a break. I know you're also going over and above, and it's nice to have a bit of a time to sit back and reflect. So with that, I'm going to call an adjournment at what time we have? 12:37. And why don't we come back online, if it's okay, for our closed meeting at 12:45. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.